The German verb categories. Hello, English-speaking world, all the German learners, I greet you. In this video, we'll be looking at the categories of German verbs. There are two main categories of German verbs with two subcategories each. Firstly, there are Hilfsverben, auxiliary verbs, and secondly, there are Vollverben, main verbs. The main verbs are the normal verbs, and the auxiliary ones, literally helping verbs, are verbs that are used in combination with other verbs. The auxiliary verbs are grouped into temporale Hilfsverben, temporal auxiliary verbs, and modale Hilfsverben, modal auxiliary verbs, or short, Modalverben, modal verbs. The temporal ones are sein, haben and werden, to be, to have and to become, which are used to form many tenses and other grammatical constructions. They are irregular, not all of the forms but some, so they need to be learned by heart. This shouldn't be too hard since it's only 3 and they are used all the time. Now let's go to the second subcategory, the modal verbs. Those are 6 verbs that are usually combined with other verbs to express wishes, obligation, permission, recommendation, ability, likeliness, and they are also used for polite speech. I've given you 8 in this list because 2 of their subjunctive forms are also frequently used and play a big role. These verbs have a special stem for the singular that needs to be learned together with a verb. They also have no conjugation for the first and third person singular, meaning they only use the stem for ich and er, sie, es. The verbs and their stems are können, kann, can, wollen, will, want, müssen, muss, must, sollen, soll, shall, dürfen, darf, may, mögen, mag, like, möchten, möchte, would like to, sollten, sollte, should. Now let's leave the auxiliary verbs and go to the main verbs. There are also 2 subcategories to talk about. There are schwache Verben, weak verbs, and starke Verben, strong verbs. The weak ones are the overwhelming majority of verbs in German. They are always regular and easy to use. They have a standard conjugation that looks like this. If you want to learn about this, watch my present tense tutorial. I will put a link into the description. Their past participle, which you will need to talk about the past, is built by g plus the stem plus t. For example, machen, the stem is mach, so it is gemacht, gemacht. On the other side, we have the strong verbs. The strong verbs follow different rules for many of the tenses. There's a separate video explaining these rules, but for now let's focus on the present tense and the past participle. There are about 170 strong verbs still in use, but they are among the most used in daily life. There is no way to tell them apart when just looking at their basic form. That's why you should mark all strong verbs when learning your vocabulary. The strong verbs have 2 rules for a vowel change that occurs in the verb stem in the second and third person singular, so du and er, sie, es. If the vowel of the stem is a, it will become ä. For example, fahren, ich fahre, Du fährst. Er fährt. If the vowel of the stem is E, then it will become I or I. For example, sehen. Ich sehe. Du siehst. Er sieht. This E to I change also occurs in the imperative form. For example, sehen, Sie. The difficulty with the E to I change is that you cannot predict if it will be a long or short E. It's usually just the one that sounds better. Long E will be spelled I or IE with a single consonant afterwards. And short E will be spelled I with a double consonant afterwards. Now let's take a look at the past participle of strong verbs. They end in en instead of t. So they are g plus stem plus n. For example, sehen, the stem is seh. So if it was a weak verb, it would be gesät. But since it is a strong verb, it is gesehen. Not too complicated, right? But unfortunately, the strong verbs can have a vowel change in the stem with a past participle too. For example, sehen, gesehen, but schwimmen, geschwommen. This vowel change can be predicted, but not entirely reliable. You can find the rules in my strong verb tutorial, which I will put a link to in the description. So you see, the strong verbs have rules too, but they're not as clear as the weak verb rules, and there can be exceptions too. For example, there are 3 strong verbs that don't follow this E to I change, namely stehen, to stand, gehen, to go, and heben, to lift. But there is one more group of verbs to talk about. They are usually categorized as strong verbs too, but you could also place them in between strong and weak verbs as a third group. They are called Mischverben, mixed verbs. They do follow the strong verb rules with the other tenses, but for present tense and the past participle, they act like weak verbs. They are brennen, rennen, nennen, kennen, denken, bringen. In English, burn, run, name, know, think, and bring. They have no vowel change in the present tense, and they have a T at the end of their past participle. Their past participles are gebrannt, gerannt, genannt, gekannt, gedacht und gebracht. There's one more verb that falls under the category of Mischverben, but is entirely unique in its features. It is wissen, to know. This is a strong verb that has the present tense and the past participle just like the modal verbs. So let's put it over there. The special stem is weiß and the past participle is gewusst. By the way, the modal verbs also have the T ending for past participles. And now you know about German verb categories. Let's go through them again one more time. There are main verbs and auxiliary verbs. There are 3 temporal auxiliary verbs and 6 modal ones. The temporal ones are irregular. The modal ones have a special stem for the singular and no conjugation for the first and the third person singular. The main verbs are divided into weak and strong verbs. The weak ones are strictly regular. Their participles end in T. The strong verbs have a vowel change in the present tense, namely A becomes Ä and E becomes I, but only in the second and third person singular. Their participles end in em and can have a vowel change. Then there's a third category called mixed verbs. They are just a few verbs in between weak and strong, having no vowel change in the present tense and participles ending in t. But other than that, they behave like strong verbs. And that's it. But let me just mention in the end that there's also a different teaching style for verb categories, which I don't use, but is popular especially with unexperienced teachers. You can make your life a lot easier as a teacher if you categorize weak verbs as regular and all other verbs as irregular. It does put the burden on the students, though, to learn all other verb forms by heart. But that's why I think that learning the rules, especially for strong verbs, is still better, even though there are certain irregularities within that category. And that's all for today. Vielen Dank für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit.